Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is effective communications for project success. Our guest speaker today is Mr. Brajesh Kaimal, CEO at Explicit Technologies India Private Limited. Brajesh has more than 20 years of experience in IT industry in different management positions. He is co-founder and CEO, Explicit Technologies Private Limited, an IT products and services company based in Technopark, Trivandrum, India. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker, Mr. Brajesh Kaimal. Over to you, Mr. Kaimal.
Listen to this. Thanks everybody for taking time to listen to this webinar today. A little bit detailed than what the presenter has, the organizer has did. And this method has been taken from an expert in customer engagement called James Kane, who is based out of Philadelphia. So I am taking a very small portion out of that, and I'll tell you why I am doing this kind of an introduction, and in what ways will it help when it comes to communications. I belong to a place called Pala. Exactly, the place name is Chettimadam, which is a small town in southern part of Kerala, which is the southernmost state of India. I work in Technopark, Trivandrum, which is the greenest technopolis on earth. And to those of you who have never visited this place, I could see the sun setting in the Arabian Sea from my workplace. If that gives you an idea about what are the kind of work timings I keep. Though I am yet to see a sunrise from my office, I'm sure I'll be able to do that because I can see the east as well as the west from my workplace, which is a beautiful place. So any of you who have not visited this place, you can definitely visit this place even as a tourist. It is worth it. I'm a vegetarian, and I have studied in my degree in St. Thomas College in Pala, and my MCA from Thrissur Engineering College, Government Engineering College, Thrissur. And I started my career with Transmatic Systems, a small IT company in Trivandrum in 1992. I worked with National Informatics Center in Delhi, and also tried projects in Delhi and Singapore, both with Triumph projects, before I moved to Nest in Trivandrum Technopark in 1999. After that, I went on to co-found the Explicit Technologies in 2008. I worked with customers like Omron, Hitachi, Simsai, among many small customers as well. I'm a volunteer of PMI. I've been the founder of PMI Trivandrum chapter, and I was in the board of PMI Trivandrum chapter for about 6 years before I took up a volunteer position at the global level. I am currently a member of the Technology Advisory Council to PMI's IT department. The committee is called TechMag. I'm a life member of Computer Society of India, and I'm also a member of IEEE and IEEE Computer Society, which is my way of giving back to the society and also to help fellow professionals as well as students to come up in whatever ways I could provide advice to them. I was born in 1967, so there is no need to guess my age. I'm married. I have 2 sons, 2 teenagers who are studying in class 12 and class 10. A little bit of spiritual orientation is there for me, and I love listening to music, Carnatic music, and any kind of music. I'm able to even identify a couple of ragas of Carnatic music. I've got a decent exposure to quality systems like ISO, CMM, and CMMI. I was part of the appraisal team which successfully conducted the CMMI level 5 appraisal for my previous organization. I love traveling. I visited many countries both on official level as well as for PMI purposes. I attend PMI's Leadership Institute meetings and conferences. And I'm reasonably contemporary in terms of my presence in social media. I'm there on LinkedIn, I'm there on Facebook, and there on, I used to be there on Orkut. I hope it is still alive. So I'm reasonably there, contemporary. And this is my first webinar. So probably if you come across any problems from my side in terms of not engaging with you or anything, the reason is this. This is my first webinar in my life. Now I'll come to, before we begin the topic of communication, I'll tell you why I chose to do a self-introduction of myself in this way, which is taken from James Kane. You can go and visit James Kane's website where he explains
Mr. Kaimal,
in greater detail.
Mr. Kaimal,
I have attended.
Mr. Kaimal, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Could you please speak a little louder? The attendees are not able to hear you.
Okay.
And one more request.
Okay.
One more request.
I will explain.
Yeah, one more request. The PPT,
Yes.
the PPT is taking time to load. So could you please go a little slowly?
Sure.
Right? Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the reason for doing an introduction like this is that when you do a presentation or when you're communicating, your objective is to engage the audience, whether it is customers, whether it is your teammates, whoever it is. And if people are able to relate to certain incidents, to certain places, to certain aspects of anybody's life, they will be able to recollect and retain that information within them. So when I did an introduction like this, I'm sure many of you might have been able to relate yourself to Technopark or to some of the companies that I mentioned, or to some of the places that I have mentioned. So the objective of doing an introduction like this was exactly to engage the audience and to retain some of the information that I have explained with the audience. Today's topic being communication, are engaged. Any stakeholders are engaged, and whatever needs to be done to engage all the different stakeholders, we need to do that, and this was my way of starting the presentation. Now, although the abstract of the presentation mentioned a bit of theories about communication, I'm not going to touch any of the theoretical aspects in the presentation today. I would like to keep it very simple, and one of the reasons, or the main reason behind that, is that communication is a vast area, and if you have to talk about communication, if you need to cover all aspects of communication, it will take, I'm sure, days or even weeks. So having restricted the scope of to project success, I thought I will not delve into the details of models, what are the sender models, risk, the media, etc. Rather take some of the lessons from my experience, from the experience of the colleagues, from the experience of people, and from the feedback of customers and feedback of some people who understand this in greater detail. Have any of you come across, I'm sure you might have come across such a situation, or you might have been one way or other responsible for creating such a situation. This is an extremely bad situation when you consider the fact that this has been communicated in advance. Now, if you consider, if you take into account the fact that if today's webinar was postponed and nobody was informed, and you try to log into the webinar system and then discover that the webinar has been cancelled, it will not leave a good taste with anybody. And this is one thing that we because of wrong priorities in our many, especially from the IT industry. I would be talking from or taking examples from the IT industry, as I have been working in the IT industry also. So this is nothing but a mail, a sample mail which I have taken, sent by somebody, and the timing of the mail is extremely important. The mail has been sent maybe after midnight of the deadline. But the project manager or the person who was responsible for this particular activity might knew very well that the deadline could not be met because the way the project was progressing was not possible for anybody to meet the deadline. Now, I have seen that the project leader or the project manager might have been trying the team updated of what is happening, and thereby what has happened is that all the planning that the customer or the person at the other end has done, it could be the customer or it could be the on-site team coordinator. So whatever planning that they have done considering or expecting a delivery on a particular date, they are caught by surprise, and we are not leaving any chance or any time for them to do a replanning. So whatever loss they have incurred in terms of time, in terms of effort, in terms of money, it has become unrecoverable. But the most important aspect or the most critical aspect is that it leaves a very bad taste with everybody. What is the measure of success? What are the parameters that we use whereby we can measure a success? So are we clear about the different parameters that we use to declare a project as a success? We'll see a most common set of parameters that are considered when a project is evaluated for success or for failure. Nothing complicated. The client's requirements are met or exceeded. The product has been accepted by the client. From an organization point of view, the project is completed within the allocated budget and within the allocated time frame. So it's all thumbs up. So when anybody looks at the project is deemed a success. Now, are there any other criteria that we need to look into and be deemed a success? If you recollect the standard definitions, or if you have read the PMBOK, it says that a project could be cancelled when it becomes clear that the objectives of the project cannot be met. Even in that case, Thomas Alva Edison, he said, even though I failed 250 times, I would like to call it, I have found out 250 methods of not discovering a light bulb. So even there are projects which are successful without even meeting the clients. of social media, everybody is very active, doing a lot of communication, relevant things, non-relevant things, sharing, status updates, and all of that happen. I would like to classify this into 3 boxes. One is within the team, where we talk about the tasks, where we talk about the requirements, talk about the importance of doing certain things, giving feedback to the team, coaching the team, training the team, etc. on a regular basis. We also do communicate above our organizational hierarchy, below the hierarchy, and across to get help, to get resources, to engage the travel department for organizing the travel. On many aspects of the project, we do engage with all people at all levels in the organization. And the third, and which is most important, is with customers. Customers are the regular basis to understand what is the exact need of the customer. It is extremely difficult, but we do that. We resort to different mechanisms. We send people on site. We do have face-to-face meetings. We call customers to our site if it is an offshore project. Lots of mechanisms. We use a lot of tools to make sure that we capture everything, and the objective is to meet the customer's requirement. So if you take a look at the 3 dimensions, if I may call, one is within the team, where you take a role of communication. One is within the organization, where you take a slightly different role. And when it comes to customers, we take a and the team. The team is the one which is responsible to deliver the project. To work leaders are supposed to give them the right feedback, apart from giving them the right activities, along with the schedule and other required aspects. Similarly, customer is the one who is paying for the project, and we have to make sure that customer is not kept in the dark. We should not be responsible for not updating plan accordingly. Now, many a times I have seen, when I have been working at site, that customer make their plan in accordance with the plan directed to them. So once the plan has been communicated to the customer, most of the plan, or we think of communicating with the customer only when going to hit a deadline. So they need to bother about this. There are certain things which are explicit, and there are certain things which are implicit. Deliverables which are identified by the customer, or which has been there has been an agreement among the customer and the supplier. It can be classified as the project plans, the contract, the statement of work, the status reports, and the deliverables, etc., where there has been an agreement that the supplier will send these things, customer will review this, etc. And most of the time we will have predefined templates, although we resort to just filling the templates just for the sake of doing it. But what are the implicit communications? There are a set of other things which we don't realize that is a communication. Things like review reports, that you may have to, your customer may ask you to send a review report, or a functional requirement specification. You may send a draft of that without realizing that customer is actually, the customer understands what the supplier is trying to do. You send the code base to customer. Customer takes a look, and I am saying that, is this what your people are doing? And that is only when that we realize that this has been the code which was there, but we are supposed to delete it, or the comment has been done poorly, or there has been a copy paste. So many things. Now, these are some of the implicit communications that happen. Phone call is another example. Many times we don't realize that we are talking to, and we need to be formal. Important is that create perceptions. Whatever, when we do a phone call in a casual manner, the customer may probably think that this person is probably casual in nature. When we crack a loose joke without thinking without considering the situation with the team may think that the project leader or the project manager is not responsible, is not taking the ownership of the team. We may think that we are aligned like a cat looking into the mirror. But the point is that unless and until we are careful, even in a implicit communication, communications. Without our knowledge, and that is extremely important because we never know. That is the danger part here is that we are, and perceptions are really important because once a perception is created, it is very difficult to change that perception because every activity task that is being done will be viewed perception. Now we have to knowingly create the right perceptions so that it helps a healthy completion of project, healthy build-up of the team, and is good for the business. Do we respond to the same kind of approach we come to our personal life, or do we take a different approach? Among friends, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, are we using are we taking the same kind of an approach so that the casualness or the perception is built in the wrong manner? I think it is different. Why is it so? Many people really care about what they post in or what is the image that they are building, and there are a lot of cartoons available on the internet which says what is the perception and what is the reality. When you type, I'm 16, the reality could be that person could be 60. Now, why are we not taking the same kind of care and the same kind of approach when we come to our professional lives? Building trust work with anybody, and perceptions can act either way. Perceptions can methods that we employ for creating trust in the family. Those of you who have got kids at home, or the kind of effort that parents have taken to build trust, and the picture here shows exactly that a child is thrown up in the air and then the child is laughing. That is exactly what is called trust. Now, in IT projects, many a time you are not even seeing the customer. The customer sees you through the activities. Customer sees you through the mails, the deliverables that you make, and customer takes a decision whether this person is trustable or not based on what he sees, what he hears. So it is extremely important that we take effort to build this trust so that you become a dependable character in front of the customer, in front of the organization, and that helps everybody. And another aspect that we do at home is that, or with friends, is that we make sure that the message is sent across to the other person. Do it with us always. You can try by smiling. You will not be able to do that. Irritated with the customer, if you're irritated with somebody, or if you think that you don't have control over things, you start working with a smile. If you are talking to a customer, make sure that the irritation that you have or the current situation of the project, the stress created due to that situation, is not reflecting in your conversations. Your objective as a leader, as a project manager, is to make sure that you come out of the situation, whatever you are in a graceful manner, so that the relationship can be healthy, there can be good customer engagement, and the team is happy, and in turn the organization is happy. So if we all take the stand of doing, whether it is talking to somebody, whether you are preparing a document, the attitude and your feeling will definitely get reflected in the whatever activity that you are doing. Another mentioned many a times is listening. Studies have shown that when you have been done among PMs, and it has been said that PMs have got very poor listening skills, which is extremely dangerous. If you are not listening properly, you are not understanding the situation. What is to understand? Always be inquisitive, like a child. A child is always inquisitive. If you are inquisitive, your listening skills will improve, and that will help you to communicate better. One to the situation, and you'll be able to apply your common sense. So it is always extremely important that you develop an inquisitive mind with an attitude to understand. Body language is an extremely important aspect, and it has been discussed when it comes to a face-to-face presentation or a face-to-face meeting, or when you go for an interview. Always people say that you need to have the right body language so that other person notices you for all the right reasons. There is also this body language for letters. I was reading in a book that, if you recollect the email example that I told you, by looking at the body of the email or by looking at the body of a document, you may decide that This is not something that I want to see. That attitude is on the spelling. Nowadays, all the documentation tools come with spell checkers, and people do not even look at spelling. There are even with red usage of technology. Lot of tools are available, and people many times do not use the right tool so that they can make sure that with the team. So you have to make sure that you use the appropriate and right technology, like the image that is seen there, where this is taken from the famous film Jungle Book, where Mowgli is being hypnotized by Kaa the python. To build a trust, you may get a second chance. You get a feedback live from the customer many a times, unless the other person is a cold reactor. You will be able to judge what is going on, whether you have been able to send across the message, etc. But in virtual communications, you have to be extremely clear, and you have to be extremely conscious and careful in the way things are being communicated. Respect time, especially the other person's time. The customer or the on-site person is informed right at the end of the day that we will not be able to, and it says that your appointment is next week. So I'm almost always on time. It is the date that I have trouble with. There is also a cultural element in the way the Western world works. Appointments. In India, I would say that is not very doctors may expect. If we are aware that we need to rush, we'll make sure that we are there on time, if not before time. We'll respond in time to customers or to our team members. It is always better to tell customer, inform in advance that I'll get back to you by this time, so that he can plan accordingly. Whatever plans he must have made with respect to marketing, with respect to testing, with respect to deployment, etc., gets affected because of the delay here. And another in my career is that to you soon, and the worst part is that you don't respond after that. Now, I was told that in China, if you assign a task to somebody and say that you have to finish it tomorrow, it will never get finished because they don't know what is tomorrow. So you have to tell them the exact date. You have to finish this on 28 so that they'll finish it. Now, you have to be sensitive and respect others. On close beating around the bush and not communicating what is to be communicated. Just like the cartoon says, I love you just the way you are when you are not being just the way you are. I don't know whether anybody could make out anything out of this. So the important aspect here is that it has to be clear, concise, and it should not run into pages. If you are conveying a delay in to make sure that you documenting a diagram to that. The objective is to make sure that the other party, whether it is a team member or the customer, understand things clearly, because you can lose a lot of critical time in communication if your communication is not proper. And we'll always blame that the requirements were not clear. But in fact, the requirements were not understood properly, and a lot of time was spent in going back and forth on the requirements or on the design or on other discussions. So it is extremely important to be clear and concise, and need to focus on the written body language so that the other person, the reader, finds different. Usually we have a different answer. So when we deal with a customer, we always say that this customer is difficult, he doesn't understand what we are saying, whereas in reality it could be our problem. So if we consider a friend approach towards customer, towards the team members, we'll make sure that we go to any extent to make sure that the message is got through, the requirements or the communication is completely and clearly understood by the other party. A similar is the case with a teacher-student approach. The effort that a teacher takes to make the children understand. We don't take that very often with customers. Most of the time, customer may not be exactly knowledgeable in the way we think. We are supposed to be the experts when we implement a solution, when we develop a solution, and we need to take a teacher-student approach. And if required, we'll have to explain. We have to resort to different methods to make sure that the customer understands requirements or what we are trying to communicate in the way we want customer to understand. We need to understand the cultural sensitivity of gestures. Pointing a finger is considered extremely bad in many cultures. In Japanese, if you go and point your finger, they consider it intimidating. So even if you are a good project manager, you are a good leader, that one gesture of yours could land you in big trouble, and customer will suddenly start distrusting you, and that could be the disaster for the project. Gender confusion. I have given some of the names which could be for a female or for a male, and this has landed many people in trouble, and I have seen people apologizing, saying that I thought you are a woman or you are a man, and this is, if you take a lot of Indian names, and there are also foreign names like Christian and Christine. Christian is usually a lady and Christian is usually a male. But you need to be extremely careful, especially when you are sending mails or when you are doing a virtual communication. Usage of jargons. You may say mouse. A person who is not familiar with mouse will understand it as a living mouse. And depending on the context that you use, you don't know what is the kind of understanding that that other person will have based on the jargons. And in IT, in any profession, there are a lot of jargons that we use on a day-to-day basis, and we think that everybody else understands it the same way that we do. And we need to be extremely careful when we resort to usage of jargons. Communication is for engaging customers, and especially when you are with the customer face to face, it helps you if you have understanding of the general interest of that locality. There is no point in going to US and then talking to him about cricket and Sachin Tendulkar or probably the test match with West Indies. So you need to be aware of the local interest. Some of the things like cinema, sports, baseball, etc., soccer, the difference between soccer and football in US, etc., helps you to engage customers in better way, which will help to build trust. Sensitive to time, understand the time zone, the time dedication is sent across rightly and in time. In many cases, I have seen that there is confusion with respect to timing and people forgetting to get into the teleconferences, which are very common these days. Even in the US, where there are 5 times zones, people get confused with these. There is extremely keep reminders. There are need to be within India, outside India, and the problem here is that you use a slang and it will be understood in a completely different way by the other person. So it is always better that you do not use any slangs unless you are absolutely sure. But this absolutely sure attitude may land you in trouble, because this absolute sure may be a misunderstanding. Acronyms. This is another area where we are experts in IT industry, where we call everything as FRS, SRS, then DFD, HLD, LLD, etc. Now, we always think that the other person, even our customer who is not an IT expert, will understand what it is. So we go and tell customer, this is a problem with your TCP IP, so we'll go and fix it, and the DNS is where it creates problem, etc. But in that process, what we are failing to communicate is that we are failing to communicate the problem. We are rather complicating the issue by bringing in a lot of acronyms and jargons. It's always better to keep things very simple. And this says at first I loved a simple man, then I realized with creeping horror that they were very serious. So if you keep things simple, it becomes easy for you, it becomes easy for all the other parties, and it is very easy to understand if things are simple, similar to the Tata Docomo advertisement. Keep it simple, silly. Makes everybody happy. Cry. Child doesn't bother about what is the situation. Whatever emotion that child comes across, child will immediately express that. At the end of it, the good part is that the child will make everybody happy. You can, very simple, and you'll always have that inquisitive mind in you, so that you don't overcomplicate things, and also you don't get into a situation where you think things are out of control. Now with this, I would like to see the project success from a different point of view, where we saw this picture in the beginning, that project success. I would like to add another attribute to this, which is communication. So if you have a project failure customer, you will still have a good customer with you. And what does success mean? The success should mean client retention. So this cartoon says, Bill, our best customers are in an outrage. They say they haven't heard from you in the last month. And this, yep, I had to, so I could focus on this new deals. I sure hope it pays. I have covered in the last 40 minutes or so. If we keep things really simple and if we resort to common, we'll end up having good business through our good communication skills. That's it from my side. I think the floor is open for some questions.
All right, thanks for the insightful presentation, Mr. Brajesh Kaimal. Let's quickly take up the questions now. The questions are there in your chat page. Yeah. Can you please read out the questions and answer them?
Sure. Yeah, there is a question that when working on government project, what type of communications work best from one Mr. Gupta? We need to resort to in a government project or in a private project, the stakeholders. You need to understand the situation that you are in and look at what is the best technique that you can employ rather than looking at you need to resort to a different kind of communication technique when you are working in a government project. What is extremely important is you have to find out methods for engaging your customers. And that is where the interest could be different for different people. In government, they may be worried about public anger or maybe a public outcry. So you have to resort to, basically it is about understanding the sensitivity of the situation. There is another question where the project manager, it says project manager spends the question, but I am not very sure how many project managers will agree that they spend 70% of their time in communication is first thing. And if that is so, I don't think a project should fail, because 70% of time in communication, I assume, would be on understanding the situation, you resorting to the right kind of communication methods, etc. So the word effective means meeting requirements. If you look at the quality systems and all, we use effective to convey that we are meeting requirements. So if you are doing, if you are meeting the requirements in terms of communication or in terms of, see the danger with communication is that most of the time we are not realizing that we are doing a communication, but we are communicating something to them. So that's what happens. The next question is, how do we measure the communication effectiveness? When we work in the big project, there will be a multi-channel communication. Project manager frequently gets escalation for the lack of communication. I am not very sure whether we have a parameter for measuring the communication effectiveness. The reason being, overdose of communication is also equally bad, if not more. Escalation, I don't think is a reason for having no communication. Escalation is probably due to other issues. But in a large project, you need to have a clear and detailed communication plan along with delegation, so that project manager is sure that the communication is at the appropriate levels rather than getting escalated to the project manager at all times. And the project manager has to make sure that the core team of the project or the project control team, the core team, has got information updated. Nowadays there are a lot of tools available. Even if you are missing certain things. Like there are simple tools for which is effectively used in IT, like Basecamp, where you can post all your things and everybody will be able to see what is the current status of certain aspects. And there are solutions like SharePoint available, which are internally deployed in many organizations for knowledge sharing and information sharing and all of that. So you need to use the appropriate tools, and the communication effectiveness will be known as you progress. An activity has been completely missed, etc. So that is some area where you need to focus on, whether effective delegation is happening at an appropriate level. Communicate with customers. How do we control this? Very interesting question. Most of the time, our intention when we commit a date is not to not analyzing and then doing, but it is many a times to impress the other person, to say that no, this is silly for us, this is simple, so we'll do it in a couple of hours, just give us a couple of hours time. Now this is something that we need to teach every team member, because you don't know who is going to do this commitment, and if a team member commits and the project manager says that it is not possible, it is usually the critical aspect here is that you need to teach everybody that when somebody asks you, you don't have to commit. You can always say that I need to do an analysis to find out, or you can always say that okay, these are the different aspects. If I got it correctly, let me go into a little bit more detail before I commit a date to this. And in any case, couple of hours is a dangerous commitment. I don't think any activity, if we apply our common sense from an IT perspective, the customer might say that, or the developer might say that I'm going to modify 2 lines and then it will be all right. But then we look at the modification of 2 lines, then compilation of the work, then deployment of the solution, then testing the solution, and then releasing. That itself will take more than 2 hours. So it is, I think, we have to educate the team members and educate people, even if it is from the sales side, that you should not go and make commitments which are completely unreasonable. How can you work better if, the next question is, how can you work better if somebody you work with has poor listening skills, your manager? That is an interesting question. Now, what will you do if this person is your husband, is what I need to ask you in return. I'm not saying that we can resort to the same kind of techniques, but we may have a little bit more patience. We may try things differently so that we get this person's attention and we try to get the message across, which is more important. So I think once you realize that that person is your manager and you are going to work with that person, I think you have to take a teacher-student approach or a friend approach to find out what works better, rather than, because you may not have a choice. And I don't think escaping that situation by going into another organization will help you, because there is no guarantee that you will come across a worst person in the next organization. The next question is, which communication is more important for a project, formal or informal, oral, verbal, or written? I would say all of that is important. In a situation where a formal communication is warranted, you should go for a formal communication. If an informal communication will help, you should do that. And this is a very broad question. Sometimes in a team, when you are communicating a bad news, an oral communication may be better rather than sending an email and then that email getting transmitted to the response. Only one method is suitable for a particular project. Can you please throw some light on read between the lines, how important it is? I would relate this to the trust aspect. If the other person is trusting you, there may not be lines happening, or even if reading between lines happen, you will be able to make out. So we have to display attributes that will enable the other person or the team to build a trust in us. You have to be a trustable person. So once the trustable attribute comes into play, many times the reading between lines will not happen. And reading between lines will happen the first time because of a previous experience or because of some experience with another person or with the same person. Next question is, how can we understand the perception of customer in virtual meeting? Also, can you share effective tips to conduct effective virtual meeting? This is extremely difficult question. Now, one method is, once you have a virtual meeting, and this is again a cultural aspect, very rarely we follow it up with a mail or a confirmation, noting down what are the points and what are the action items that have come out of it. So one way of knowing this is you document whatever you have discussed, maybe as bullet points, scribbled notes, send it to the customer, and depending on the response, you may be able to make out what is it. Unless you know the other person personally or through somebody else, it is very difficult to understand the feeling of people from a virtual meeting, especially a phone call, because there are so many other things. The other person, if he doesn't know good English, then he may not be communicating clearly what his emotions are. So it is very difficult, but you need to do follow-up, and then you will be able to make out. But over a period of time, you will be able to make out what is the person's emotion or the perception. Next question is about face-to-face discussion. How to correct the client perception that his viewpoint is wrong? If he says straight away during face-to-face conversation, he'll think that we have touched his ego. Certainly, we are creating a negative atmosphere. Correct. How to achieve effective communication in this type of situations? This question is very true, and in many cases, we will not be able to handle this situation, and we are not trained to do this in many cases. On one side, we have a pressure of not touching the ego, so we'll probably take that stress on us rather than trying to convey the point. So my suggestion here is that we need to look at different techniques, and many a times if you get hold of some reference to validate your point, to make your point more clear, that this particular book says or this particular document says this is good and this has been done in the past, etc., that will probably help. But it is not at all good to hurt ego of somebody, especially if you know that this person has got high ego. And my manager in India doesn't want me to share. Should I think good for a center and believe my center manager, or give correct details for my project to account manager who needs that info for good of a project? I think the second portion of your question clearly says that whether you should consider good for the project. Now we need to, I think, look at what is needed for each and every person. I may want certain information, but is that what I really am eligible for? I think that is an important aspect. So you as a project manager should know the power centers and what are the requirements and what are the eligibilities of each and every person, and then you will be able to take an appropriate decision whether I should share these things or whether I should not share. And just because somebody is a manager, he cannot demand that you should provide him an information which is not supposed to be seen. When communicating project status from a management standpoint, what all things should definitely be included in emails? The book or the suggested approach says that when you communicate a project status, you should always communicate the accomplishments that you have made so that the other person knows what is the progress that is made. Then, of course, the progress that is made with respect to schedule or with respect to if it is required, and a slight or an indication of how the project is progressing and what is the likelihood chance of completing the project on time. The projection will also be helpful. The next question is, how should the email be formatted / composed to it easily highlights the issues / risk? Therefore, very bad medium, because after some time, when you lose the trail, you will not have any record of what has been communicated. Make sure that it is taken as a formal mail. The subject clearly says whether it requires attention, whether it requires action, so that they will read that particular email with that in mind. So that required seriousness will be attributed, because people have got this habit of just looking at the subject and then deciding whether to read it now or whether I don't read it. And once they postpone it, they may not look at it at all. So phrasing the subject appropriately is extremely important, and then make it very brief, saying that this is the problem and I think this is what we should do. Please suggest or please advise or please act. So if you make it very brief, but if you have got analysis, risk analysis, etc., please use some other methodology like creating a document and then making it available in your configuration management system, etc., so that it is available for future reference. I believe it is necessary for us as good project managers to monitor the efficiency of communications regularly throughout the course of the project. Can you share some of your good and bad experiences and also some of the best practices that we can follow? If you do not get any bad experiences that can be taken as a will not voluntarily communicate. I think that is the most disastrous part. You as a leader will depend on people to update the status, for example. I'm just giving a simple example. And if they don't do it at evening, at the end of the day, when you look for a person, he is not there, he has left, his mobile is switched. You don't know what has gone wrong, and your manager, which is extremely bad. So what is important is you have to communicate to all the people in the team that everybody is at their level and they have to communicate. Next question is how to handle gender identification. You need to resort to experience of other people, and there are a lot of people who are available who can help you with the names, but even then you may go wrong. But do not hesitate to apologize. If you have gone wrong with the gender, there is absolutely no problem in apologizing, because you need to think from that person's point of view. If somebody calls you something and you get a feeling, that feeling will go away by. The next question is, how does project manager get confirmation from email receiver that he has understood subject clearly? I don't think we have devised a method where we can get confirmation on understanding. The best part is you can probably put some probing questions. You can put some leading questions on. We understand that this is the way. Is this right? Is our understanding correct? So that you are prompting the other person to answer certain things, and that would probably, by reading the answer of that person, you would probably get an indication whether he or she has understood it correctly. Expected are unrealistic, yet he is very ambitious. We need to resort to metrics. That is the best possible method. If you have been working with this particular person for in the past, probably mails, closure process becomes extremely important. Closure is also a communication. And if you are able to take up where you can substantiate saying that you are not productive, this is your problem, you are not using capable resources, etc. So it is always better to resort to some dependable methods where metrics runs data. If there are no past data available with the same customer, we can resort to some standard benchmarks which are available to try and convince the other person. Could you suggest effective ways of communication with Middle East government customers? That's a difficult question for hard in making them understand through the language. We speak in English, they probably understand it in Arabic or in Japanese or in Korean or whatever language. I think that is probably one difficulty. But with whatever little experience with government customers, I have found that many of them have got high ego. So we need to be very careful that we are not hurting the ego. And at the same time, in many places, the maturity of the customers, we can get hold of somebody who has got. I'm sorry, I cannot, I don't have real life experience to give you more details on that. Next question is, if you say we don't use acronyms like TCP/IP and start to explain to customer, he or she may feel irritated if already aware about it, IP or DNS. But if the customer is not knowledgeable, the customer always gets a feeling that you're trying to complicate the things. So you, instead of saying internet is probably, so you have to at all. TCP/IP is always better than saying transport control protocol or transmission control protocol. So in that common man's standpoint. In a live project scenario where your client refutes or does not respond or limits information, what should be the best course to ensure no to the project? What should be the best course to, I will take it as the customer not cooperating. In that case, I think the best method is a face-to-face meeting, and you take along somebody else also if you think you will not be able to manage this situation. That is probably the best suggestion that we can resort to. When working with stakeholders across geographies, accent is very important. How effective are accent utilization trainings? What are some good resource institutes? Institutes who impart such trainings. That is very important. You got it right. Now the best method is, many a times we use difficult, but in reality we don't need to use any difficult or complicated words. We can do methods whereby we are increasing the chance of the other person understanding what we are trying to say. I am not aware of many people. I know only 1 or 2 persons who have who are into this accent utilization training. So I cannot suggest or recommend anybody. What a typical communication plan in a project should possess is the next question. I would suggest the communication plan to have who are the real critical stakeholders of this project and what are the needs that you should not miss. That is extremely important. It is okay if you don't communicate everything, but most of these people, the stakeholders would have something critical. Somebody would really want to know how the project is going. Somebody in the team might want to know what is the technology direction that you are taking. The team you can manage separately, but in the communication plan, I suggest that you should put down the important stakeholders of the project and what is their influence on the project and what is that they are expecting from this project. What is the difference between assertive communication and aggressive communication? And assertive communication doesn't have aggressive, offended, but when you get aggressive, the chances are that the ego may be hurt, you may be touching the wrong points, and they develop a resistance to communication. Assertive means that you say that, okay, this is what we need to do. We have to finish this task by tomorrow. And this is probably an assertive communication. You can say the same thing in a different way, saying that I had told you many times that this is what we are supposed to do. What have all these? This is the difference between aggressive communication in one word, communication, rather than getting aggressive, because when you get aggressive with one person, you need to understand that you are unsettling the complete team who is sitting in front of you, not only the person whom you are addressing. with virtual method. But if you can devise and the other team building exercises virtually, where you circulate explains about what are interests, what lot of privacy things. If you are able to get that, then you will be able to make out, or you will be able to get more peace about this particular person or the team members. And then while you communicate with the people, you know what are they sensitive about, what are they not sensitive about. And when some incident happens, for example, I remember very clearly when an earthquake happened in Pakistan, many of the people from the US who were friends, we had some friends there, we all asked, you know, are you safe, etc. And that kind of builds the trust in them, and that kind of take the friend approach to this. Is it okay that we go for gold plating to make customer happy? PMI very clearly says no, we should not do gold plating. What are the effective methods to come to a resolution in case of a conflict or a virtual communication medium? I think the best possible method is to shut up. You don't talk further and then increase the conflict. Probably you should let somebody else talk, and then try to convey what was the objective, and also try to understand the conflict. Give it some time to settle rather than trying to address it immediately. Next is a very generic question. What could be possible communication gaps in a project? The communication gaps in a project could be right from requirements to anything. So not communicating to customer, you say that I'll get back to you by Monday, you don't know which Monday, you never get back to customer, then customer says, and then you don't even say sorry. So that's a very generic question, and it's like if something could go wrong. Next question is, what type of communication be practiced when with the client in meetings or discussion at dinner? Formal and informal ratio. To understand the customer better, his or her interest better. So a dinner is usually called for either for a happy situation like a project kickoff or a project about yourself, and also to understand more about the customer, so that it will help you to engage the customer and to retain the customer. So the communication methodology should be more informal and a little bit formal, but of course there is a little bit of cultural sensitivity. So you need to prepare when you are dealing with customers from different geographies. They are sensitive to certain aspects, so you should know what they are sensitive to. In some regions, if you ask about their family, etc., that is not considered very polite. So they may not want to reply, etc. So you do some preparation first, that an informal meetings. The talk on effective communication for project success is very insightful for me as I am preparing for PMP in September. My question is there a method of communication in different linguistic realms like geographical areas or personalities like an angry boss? See, I can give you an example. If you are in Japan, for example, I'm not touching the part of the angry boss. The Japanese people would want to help you out, but they are not very conversant with English. Many of them are not very conversant with English. So if you talk to them in English and then you expect a reply, that would put them in a very difficult situation. But they are very good in writing and pictorial representation. So if you are asking for finding out, you want to find out a building, you are asking how to get to that building, etc. You can write it down. I want to from here to that place. How? So they will reply in steps. Okay, go this, go this, go this. Take taxi, take train, etc. So although the method is not different, you have to be sensitive to the capabilities of the person or the understanding sensitivity of that particular geography. And to deal with an angry boss, it's difficult, but basically you can keep quiet, or you can, you cannot generalize it. The next question is, do you think a PMO office should play an important role than PM in communication? I don't think so. PMO can play an important role in terms of equipping the PM to handle communications better. But the lessons or the good things, bad things should come from the PM itself, from the project. Should there be different communication methods for different stakeholders? Yes, I think it should be different. For example, the way you deal with the team or way you deal with your manager, you may not be able to deal with the same way with the customer. So although the matter that is being communicated is the same, you may have to adopt a different approach. In Agile Scrum, there is no communication plan and everything is communicated through daily Scrum meetings. How can we handle personal communication in this model if some people are feeling hurt because of open movement? I think this first statement is wrong. There is no communication plan. In Agile, the plan itself is a communication plan. So everybody is called for the Scrum meetings and then discuss openly, identify problems, understand risk. Then the same thing is, and customers' involvement is critical in Agile. So the customer is also in the loop. And this feeling hurt can come through the behavior, and I think that can be solved. That person needs to be called separately and then spoken, etc. So I think that can be solved. I'm facing too much implicity in a Scrum team members on some of the future happenings, how to satisfy the team. This is the next question. I don't know whether this implicit is really about their future, whether the organization will support, or it is with respect to something else. So you have to give an appropriate picture to start, getting more inquisitive about the future. The next question is, I heard in your session that communication would make even project failures retain customers. If the customer priority is not met and a project is a failure and customer is very certain not to buy your thought, how do you handle the situation? Okay, I did not mean to say that even project failures will, see, the point is the project may fail due to different reasons. But if a project is failing due to the performing organization's inability or performing organization messing up things, then communication cannot help. But there may be a project which got cancelled because of certain reason, or there may be some unfortunate incident happen. If you maintain good communication with customer, then chances are that the customer will still engage you. If the customer contact might be in a difficult situation that he cannot give you the next project, I'm sure in future he'll think about you when he has some other project in his disposal. So that is what I was trying to communicate. So if you are able to leave a good impression with the customer, that can be done only through communication. And if you are able to do that, I'm sure the customer will consider you next time. What is the best way of communication with subordinates who are at remote places? I suggest you should at least meet them once if possible, so that they know who you are and you know what their priorities are, what they are, and you can attach a face to the name. And the best method is to talk to them as often as you can over phone and then find out. How to motivate customer to give feedback or review comments when there is a big delay? Is the next question. I don't think we can motivate a customer, but the big delay, we need to justify the big delay. And as I said in the previous question, you need to resort to dependable figures, dependable metrics to convince the customer. And this is one area where it becomes extremely important that we have all the past data in the project. The progress of the project is clearly monitored and then captured so that you can take out the relevant points to convince the customer the reason for the delay. how to overcome accent while communicating in virtual scenario. Speak slowly, and if you think you have an accent, you talk to somebody else and then get feedback. Try to correct. There is nothing that cannot be corrected because communication is a skill, and any skill you can train people on.
Yeah, Mr. Kaimal.
There is research which suggests that at times
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you like to take more questions, or shall we conclude?
I think I think we'll conclude.
Okay, fine. No issues. Please go ahead.
Or you want to take? There are only 3-4 more questions. If you want to. Hello.
Yeah, sorry. You said something?
Yeah, there are only 3 more questions. So you would like to finish that?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Okay, yeah. There is a research which suggests that at times communication goes haywire or misunderstood due to cross-culture or gender stereotypes. How these should be managed in a project with diverse people and different demography? The most important aspect here I understand is that you need to know whom you are communicating to, what culture they belong to, what genders are there, and what is the demographic attributes. So once you know that, then probably you can fine-tune the communication. You can have custom communication to a set of people so that it is understood properly. Next question is, while in an annual feedback of our team members, PM being representative of employer, how should the employee be conveyed about the low performance of company? Please suggest. First of all, I don't think PM is a representative of employer. Although PM has got a duty to convey what has to be conveyed, that is part of the PM's responsibility. Now, many a times what happens with feedbacks is that we don't give regular feedback. So all the while, to keep the team motivated or to keep the person motivated, we may give a feedback that you are doing a good job. That's extremely fine. And when it comes to an annual appraisal, many PMs find it difficult to document the feedback because they feel that that may be taken against them. So when it becomes, when you reach a stage where you have to convey a bad news that, okay, you are going to be monitored for the next 3 months, and if you don't perform, you'll have to look for other options within the organization or outside. Then it becomes a difficult proposition because you have not given the right feedback at the right time. So I suggest that we need to give constant and continuous feedback, frank and honest opinion, and people will take it if you are trustable. So developing that trust in the team is extremely important, and through good and open communication you will be able to do that. And the last question is, what if there is no response to multiple mails? How do you accomplish the need? Okay. That there may be difficult situations where they may not respond to mails. The other alternative is to try and call them up, and if you can visit that customer or the person, you should do that. And if the customer is in a different geography, and if we have some representative or somebody, you should visit them, because they may stop responding due to very different reasons. They are also human beings. They may not want to convey a bad news, or the person might have changed responsibility and they might have informed us, and he is not receiving your emails anymore, that is going to somebody else, and that person doesn't know you, etc. So first of all, we need to find out why there is no response to email so that we can take the appropriate action. So I am that was the last question. I hope I could answer the questions to the satisfaction.
Yeah, it was really great.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Brijesh Kaimal, for your session on effective communications for Project Success. It was indeed a great session. I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of the webinar will be available on techgeek.com by tomorrow. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Brijesh Kaimal, once again. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.